My name is Morgan Adams, 32 years old, and the forgotten middle child of the Adams software dynasty. Arriving at our Boston mansion for Thanksgiving, I noticed Dad checking his phone, obsessively whispering to Mom with unusual excitement. Little did they know, beneath my simple black dress beat the heart of someone they had drastically underestimated. The bombshell Dad was about to drop at dinner would change our family forever, but not in the way he expected. If you are watching this from a family business situation, drop a comment below and subscribe to see how I turned my father's betrayal into the sweetest revenge that changed our family forever. I grew up in Brookline, one of Boston's wealthiest suburbs, in a sprawling colonial with 6 bedrooms, a heated indoor pool, and a lawn that required 3 gardeners to maintain. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American success story. My grandfather Robert Adams started Adams Software Solutions in his garage back in 1978 with nothing but a second-hand computer and a revolutionary idea for inventory management software. He built it from nothing into a regional powerhouse before my father Harold Adams took over in 1995. Dad expanded the company aggressively. Under his leadership, Adams Software grew from a $10 million family business to a $50 million enterprise with over 200 employees and clients across the country. Every holiday dinner, every family vacation, every weekend barbecue inevitably turned into a celebration of his business genius. The Adams name became synonymous with success in Boston business circles, and Dad never let anyone forget it, especially his children. There were 3 of us Adams kids. My older brother Garrett, 38, was the golden child, despite never showing any real aptitude for the business. He majored in communications, partied through college, and still Dad handed him a vice president position the day after graduation. Garrett spent more time on his boat or with his rotating cast of girlfriends than in the office, but somehow Dad remained convinced he was the natural heir to the Adams throne. Then there was me, Morgan, perpetually stuck in the middle at 32. Unlike my siblings, I inherited my grandfather's passion for technology. I taught myself coding at 12 and built my first app at 15. I studied computer science and business at MIT, graduated summa cum laude, and had legitimate innovative ideas for modernizing the company. Yet somehow, Dad always looked right through me during business discussions, as if I were invisible. My younger sister Megan, 29, rounded out our trio. She leveraged our family name to become a lifestyle influencer, with hundreds of thousands of followers who loved her. Perfectly curated glimpses into old money New England living. She had zero interest in software or business operations, but never missed an opportunity to post about being an Adams Software heiress while contributing nothing to the company's success. Mom Diane came from old Boston money and approached family conflict the way all proper Beacon Hill wives did, by ignoring it completely and pouring another glass of Chardonnay. She played peacekeeper but ultimately enabled Dad's worst behaviors, especially his dismissal of my business acumen. "Harold, maybe you should listen to Morgan's idea," she would occasionally suggest at dinner, only to immediately back down when Dad shot her that look. "Diane, please. This is actual business we are discussing," he would say, before turning back to Garrett to continue their conversation about golf or yacht clubs or whatever non-business topic they were actually discussing. Family gatherings always centered around business talk that somehow excluded me. Dad and Garrett would dominate conversations with industry jargon and inside jokes, while I sat silently despite understanding the technology and market better than either of them. If I tried to contribute, Dad would smile condescendingly and say something like, "That is sweet, Morgan, but leave the business discussions to the people who understand the real world." The breaking point came when I was 22. Fresh out of MIT with honors, I had developed a cloud-based integration solution that could have revolutionized our product line years before competitors entered that space. I spent months preparing a comprehensive business plan, market analysis, and technical specifications. Dad finally agreed to let me pitch during a board meeting, supposedly as a professional courtesy. I still remember walking into that mahogany-paneled boardroom, laptop and presentation materials in hand, heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The board members, all men in their 50s and 60s who had been Dad's friends for decades, watched with polite but distant expressions as I connected my laptop to the projector. 10 minutes into my presentation, Dad checked his watch, sighed loudly, and raised his hand to stop me mid-sentence. "I think we have seen enough," he said with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes. "Morgan, sweetheart, this is all very creative but completely impractical for a serious enterprise like ours. Our clients want stability, not experimental technologies." He turned to the board members with an apologetic shrug. "My daughter recently graduated college and is full of these academic ideas. Now, shall we move on to actual business matters?" The humiliation burned through me as I packed up my materials while they chuckled and moved on as if I had never been there. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I would leave Boston and the family business behind. I would build something of my own, something so successful that even my father could not dismiss it. I moved to San Francisco with $5,000 in savings and nothing else. My parents assumed it was just a phase, a tantrum they indulged, with patronizing amusement. "She will be back when she runs out of money," I overheard Dad telling Mom on the phone during one of our increasingly rare calls. Those early years were brutal. My tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood cost nearly my entire monthly budget. I survived on ramen noodles and coffee, working 80-hour weeks, first at entry-level coding jobs, then as a freelance developer. Every dollar I could save went into building my own company. I created Everest Holdings under the pseudonym M.E. Stone. The initials stood for Morgan Elizabeth, but nobody knew that. I wanted my success or failure to be completely disconnected from the Adams name. I started small, developing custom enterprise solutions for startups, reinvesting every profit. By year 3, I had 10 employees and a real office in Soma. The breakthrough came when I developed a proprietary integration platform that allowed legacy systems to communicate seamlessly with modern cloud services, ironically similar to what I had pitched to my father years earlier. Venture capital came calling, but I maintained majority ownership, determined to control my destiny. Over the next 7 years, I strategically acquired smaller tech companies that complemented our services. Everest Holdings grew to a $200 million valuation with offices in 3 cities. Throughout it all, I maintained my pseudonym in all business dealings. In the tech world, Emmy Stone was known as a brilliant, reclusive founder who rarely gave interviews or appeared at industry events. When I absolutely had to make public appearances, I used subtle changes to my appearance and let my COO do most of the talking. My family remained completely unaware of my success. During holiday calls and occasional visits, I kept conversations vague, describing my work as doing okay or still figuring things out. Dad never pressed for details, as he had already written off my career as inconsequential. This suited me perfectly as I built Everest into something that would one day shock them all. What they did not know was that for the past year, I had been strategically acquiring shares in companies that were key suppliers and clients of Adams Software. I studied their quarterly reports, identified their weaknesses, and positioned Everest as the perfect buyer to take Adams Software to the next level. 6 months ago, I had my CFO send an anonymous acquisition offer through a third party, which my father predictably rejected without proper consideration. Now, 10 years after being humiliated in that boardroom, I was returning home for Thanksgiving with a plan that would change everything. Adam's software was struggling with outdated technology and losing market share. My father did not know it yet, but I was about to become his worst nightmare and his only salvation. The week before Thanksgiving, I was in my corner office overlooking San Francisco Bay, finalizing the paperwork for what would be the most important deal of my life. My assistant knocked and entered with my travel itinerary. "Your private jet is confirmed for Tuesday at 11 a.m., she said, placing the folder on my desk. "Are you sure you do not want to bring your executive team to Boston for the signing?" I shook my head. "This is personal. I need to handle it alone." After she left, my phone rang. It was Isabella, my best friend, since those early struggling days when we shared a wall in adjacent studio apartments. "Are you really going through with this family Thanksgiving charade?" she asked, without preamble. "After everything they did, after 2 years of barely speaking to them." I sighed, spinning in my chair to face the window. "I have to be there in person when it happens, Izzy. I need to see his face." "I remember the last Christmas disaster," she said carefully. "Your father announced Garrett's promotion to executive vice president while you sat there with your unacknowledged Series B funding round. You came back to California and did not speak to them for months." The memory stung. Dad had raised a toast to the future of Adam's software while looking directly at my brother, who had been too hungover to contribute anything meaningful to the strategy meeting earlier that day. "This time will be different," I promised. "Everything changes this Thanksgiving." I spent the evening packing, deliberately choosing my wardrobe to make a statement. Gone were the casual clothes my family associated with me. Instead, I packed Armani suits, a Chanel dress for Thanksgiving dinner, Louboutin heels, and the subtle signifiers of success that only the wealthy recognize: a Patek Philippe watch, a Bottega Veneta handbag, small diamond earrings from Tiffany. None of it ostentatious, all of it unmistakably expensive. After years of deliberately downplaying my success around my family, I wanted them to see glimpses of it before the final revelation. Tuesday morning, I boarded the private jet I rarely used, preferring commercial flights despite my wealth. This trip warranted the exception. During the 5-hour flight, I reviewed the contract once more, ensuring every detail was perfect. The irony was not lost on me that for years I had flown coach to Boston, eating airplane peanuts and squeezing into middle seats while building the empire that would now allow me to arrive in style. The jet landed at a private airfield outside Boston. A black Bentley waited on the tarmac, another unusual indulgence I had arranged specifically for this trip. As we drove through familiar neighborhoods toward Brookline, I felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and determination hardening within me. The Addams family estate looked exactly as it always had: imposing colonial architecture, perfectly manicured grounds, now dusted with November snow, a wreath already hanging on the door in preparation for the holiday season. I instructed the driver to wait, then took a deep breath before walking up the steps I had climbed thousands of times before. Mom answered the door herself, bypassing the housekeeper in her eagerness to see me. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in my appearance. "Morgan, darling," she said, embracing me, with the scent of expensive perfume and the faint note of midday wine on her breath. "You look different. Is that a Rolex?" "Patek Philippe, actually," I said, returning her hug. "Good to see you, Mom." She ushered me inside, chattering about Thanksgiving preparations and Megan's latest Instagram milestone. I nodded politely, setting down my bag in the grand foyer with its sweeping staircase and crystal chandelier. Home sweet home, with all its complicated memories. "Your father is in his study," Mom said. He has been very busy with some big deal. Very hush-hush, even with me. I smiled. I will say hello, before I settle in. Dad's study had always been somewhat forbidden territory, a masculine sanctuary of leather mahogany and business journals. I knocked once and entered without waiting for a response, a small act of defiance. He looked up from his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, surprise flickering across his face, before settling into his usual mild disinterest. Morgan, you made it. He stood for a brief, awkward hug, then gestured vaguely toward the chair across from his desk. The trip from California was good. Very smooth, I said, deliberately not taking the offered seat. I flew private, saves time. A momentary confusion crossed his features. Private, that must have been expensive. I shrugged. Business is good. Before he could inquire further, his phone rang, and with a perfunctory, "Excuse me, this is important," he turned away to answer it. I used the opportunity to glance at the papers on his desk. There it was, the Everest Holdings acquisition proposal, with my company logo prominently displayed. My heart raced, but I maintained my composure as he finished his call. "Sorry about that," he said hastily, gathering the papers into a folder. "Big things happening at the company. You would not understand." The familiar dismissal rolled off me like water now. "Of course, Dad. I will let you get back to it." I left his study and headed upstairs to my old bedroom, which Mom had maintained as a shrine to my teenage self. Debate trophies, computer science awards, and MIT pennants still adorned the wall's dusty testaments to achievements that had never impressed the one person whose approval I had sought most. After freshening up, I headed downstairs and found Garrett in the living room, already drinking scotch at 3 in the afternoon. He had our father's tall frame and confident posture, but years of privileged indulgence had softened him around the middle. "Well, well, the prodigal sister returns," he said, raising his glass in mock toast. "Still playing with computers in California?" "Something like that," I replied with a tight smile. "How is your little startup doing? Making any money yet?" His condescension was so familiar it almost felt like home. Before I could answer, Megan burst into the room, phone held at the perfect angle to capture her entrance for her Instagram followers. "Morgan is here, everyone. Family reunion time," she announced to her phone, before air kissing my cheeks. "You look expensive, sis. Did you finally find yourself a rich boyfriend?" "No, just working hard," I said, stepping out of her camera frame. Garrett brought his new girlfriend Megan stage, whispered, still recording. "Amber. She is 24 and does yoga. Like, professionally." On cue, a willowy blonde entered the room wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that highlighted her perfect figure. Garrett immediately pulled her to his side with proprietary pride. "Amber, this is my sister Morgan. She lives in San Francisco and does tech stuff." His vague wave dismissed a decade of my professional accomplishments. "Oh my God, I love San Francisco," Amber gushed. "The shopping is amazing." Our awkward small talk was interrupted by the sound of Dad's raised voice from his study. Though the words were muffled, his excited tone carried through the house. "Yes, absolutely. Tomorrow after Thanksgiving, 50 million is the final offer. Everest Holdings has been very insistent on the terms." I excused myself to the kitchen, needing a moment alone. The household staff had always been kinder to me than my own family. Maria, our housekeeper of 20 years, was preparing vegetables for tomorrow's feast. "Miss Morgan," she smiled warmly, "it is good to see you. You look well. California agrees with you." "Thanks, Maria. Need any help?" She shook her head. "Your mother wants everything perfect for tomorrow. Big day, she says. Your father has news." I nodded, wondering if the entire household staff knew about the sale before his own children did. So I gathered. The pre-dinner drinks hour was excruciating. Mom fluttered about with forced cheerfulness. Dad checked his phone every 3 minutes. Garrett bragged about his new boat to anyone who would listen, and Megan documented everything for her followers. I sipped my wine slowly, observing the family dynamics with new eyes. No longer the hurt daughter seeking validation, but a successful businesswoman about to change the game entirely. "Dinner is ready," Mom finally announced, ushering us toward the formal dining room where the family had gathered for holiday meals for 3 generations. I took a deep breath and followed them, knowing that by the time dessert was served, nothing would ever be the same. The Addams family Thanksgiving dinner had always been a formal affair. The massive mahogany dining table gleamed under the light of the crystal chandelier, set with the Wedgwood china that only emerged for special occasions. Sterling silver candelabras held ivory tapered candles, casting a warm glow over the autumnal centerpiece of pumpkins, gourds, and fall foliage that Mom had undoubtedly commissioned from the most expensive florist in Boston. I noted with mild amusement that I had been seated at the far end of the table, as far from Dad at the head as physically possible. Typical. Garrett sat at Dad's right hand, with Amber beside him, while Megan occupied the spot to Dad's left. Mom took her traditional place at the opposite end with me, beside her, symbolically separated from the inner circle of family business by the length of polished wood between us. Maria and the kitchen staff brought out course after course: butternut squash soup, garnished with creme fraiche harvest salad, with candied walnuts and cranberries, and finally the turkey, a 25-pound bird roasted to golden perfection, accompanied by all the traditional sides. Dad carved with ceremonial precision, while Megan filmed for her social media, providing running commentary. And here is Daddy carving the turkey just like his father before him, continuing the Addams family tradition of excellence in everything they do. I caught Mom wincing slightly at Megan's performance before taking a large sip of her wine. By my count, it was her 4th glass since I had arrived. Once our plates were filled, Dad raised his glass for the traditional Addams family gratitude ritual, another performance where we each shared what we were thankful for this year. It had once been meaningful, before it devolved into a competitive status report. Garrett went first, as the eldest always did. "I am thankful for another record-breaking quarter at Addams Software," he began, though I knew from my research that the company had actually lost market share for the 3rd consecutive quarter. "And for my new 42-foot yacht, the Addams Legacy." He squeezed Amber's hand. "And for new beginnings with this amazing woman." Amber giggled and kissed his cheek, while Megan made exaggerated gagging motions when Garrett was not looking. Megan went next, phone still in hand. "I am so thankful to have reached 1 million followers this year. My collaboration with Luxury Life Cosmetics has been amazing, and I am grateful to be an Addams and represent our family brand to the world." She beamed at Dad, who nodded approvingly, though he had often complained privately about her frivolous career. When my turn came, I set down my fork and spoke clearly. "I am thankful for the lessons life has taught me. That sometimes rejection leads to the right path, that persistence matters more than privilege, and that success is the best teacher." I raised my glass. "To finding your own way." Dad frowned slightly, perhaps detecting something in my tone, but quickly moved on to his own gratitude speech, which predictably centered on the business legacy he had built. Mom offered generic thanks for family and health, her words slightly slurred. Throughout the meal, Dad seemed distracted, checking his phone under the table and occasionally whispering to Mom, whose smile grew increasingly strained. Garrett dominated the conversation with stories about clients he had supposedly impressed, while Megan interrupted regularly to share comments from her followers watching her Thanksgiving Instagram story. As Maria brought in the pumpkin and pecan pies, Dad suddenly tapped his knife against his crystal water glass, the sharp ping cutting through the dinner conversation. "I have an announcement to make," he said, standing at the head of the table with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms.